This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
In his first China visit after taking office, he expressed his expectation to jointly building a China-Malaysia community with a shared future. Committed to the cause of poverty alleviation, he described China's achievements as unprecedented in history, spoke highly of the Global Civilization Initiative. He stated that all nations belong to one family. He opposes the politicization of technologies and believes that technological progress is neither a threat nor a means to contain others. In this edition of Leaders Talk, we meet the Prime Minister of Malaysia, Anwar Ibrahim. Hello and welcome to Leaders Talk, where we meet leaders, thinkers, and trailblazers. I'm Zhou Yun. Our guest today is Anwar Ibrahim, Prime Minister of Malaysia. Since taking office last November, he has embarked his very first journey to China this spring. So what are the major outcomes of this visit? Why does he use the word surprised to describe the meeting with Chinese President? As someone who has a deep understanding about Confucianism, what are his expectations on the China-Malaysian culture exchanges between the two countries? Today, we're going to talk to our guest, Anwar Ibrahim, Prime Minister of Malaysia. Your Excellency Prime Minister, thank you so much for joining us today. Well, this is actually your very first time to visit China since taking office as Prime Minister, and your very busy and demanding schedule is going to be wrapped up very soon. So to start with, share with us about the biggest takeaway as well as the major outcome of your visit this time.
I think was the meeting with President Xi Jinping, because it was not just a normal diplomatic encounter talking about trade or investment, but we discussed quite a number of issues relating to our philosophy, our views of the world, issues of values, issue of civilization. We converse as trusted friends. But of course we did touch on specific issues of what we expect from China and vice versa, the issue of shared future, the issue of trade, investments, training, and also the potential of collaboration between these two countries. But what is to me significant is we expanded that to issues, for example, when I said about poverty alleviation. The President made reference to that, you see, because since I took over for the last 4 months, I became very committed to the issue of poverty eradication. The success in China is unprecedented. So I said, we can share. So the President was very forthcoming in that field to ensure that we benefit from the experience in China. It's not easy. Of course, it's a bigger country, you have to deal with much complex problems. Overall, I've sensed that the President showed so much understanding and passion for these sort of relations, and so much respect, which I feel a bit surprised.
What do you mean by you're surprised? Does it mean that it is beyond your expectations,
yes,
even though the expectations are actually very high there?
Yeah, because President Xi Jinping is a very prominent leader in the world and leading, one of the leading economies and, power. But he showed so much deference and, to discuss as equals. And I find it very, I should say, touching, and I value that sort of friendship. But then, secondly, of course, we have seen, because of this new wave, this enthusiasm between Malaysia and China, is reflected to the business community. So we find it's again unprecedented for so many leading captains of industry.
That's actually something I'm really curious about, because economic and trade cooperation has been one of the major highlights between the bilateral relations, and China has remained the largest trade partner for Malaysia since 2009. You just mentioned that this time you're not only with Chinese leaders, but also many business leaders and also delegates here. Some MOUs were signed as a kind of outcome. So looking ahead, what are some of the new opportunities and the most promising areas of cooperation in this regard?
The number one in this industry, which is billions of dollars worth, would sit down in a group, 50 of them, to see me, discuss, and commit to invest.
You just talk about the very impressive interactions that you had this time with Chinese President Xi Jinping. So can you give us a little bit more specific details about anything really stand up in your memory, in your recollection this time during your meetings with President?
I started off by saying his passion for reform, for his conduct, even in the domestic affairs like poverty issues, his concern for the general welfare of the people, and then of the various initiatives, as I said, BRI, and then the security concerns and the civilizational initiative. But his response was remarkable. He said, well, Anwar, you are also a student of Confucius. You seem to understand Chinese history. And I see your passion, commitment to eradicate poverty in your country. And you wrote in the Asian Renaissance, the book. So I said, well, this is, of course, commendable. So we got the chemistry right from the beginning.
When you were sworn in as Prime Minister last November, you told journalists that the role of China is pivotal. And you also said in terms of bilateral relations, you won't leave us as it is. It needs to be further enhanced. So having said that, what kind of tone do you think your trip this time has set for the future of bilateral relations? And what vision do you have for even fostering this closer ties moving forward?
Because I want to make it clear that we are fiercely independent, that we decide what is best for our country. China is an important neighbor, is a major trading partner, is a major investor into Malaysia. We look at history. In my exchanges with the President Xi you'll be surprised. We talk about Cheng He's expedition, we talked about Confucius. So, and when I wrote to him, thanking him for the congratulatory note, I quoted from Confucius, and his reply yesterday was this. He quoted one of the Confucius sayings that finally leaders or we in having responsibility need to do what is right.
What was that quote from Confucius?
From Confucius, yeah.
What needs to be?
Do what is ultimately right, because many considerations. There are many other considerations you should have, but finally, how do you decide? You decide what is right. So we went along that way. So if you ask me about our relations, of course, we want to have good relations with our neighbors. ASEAN is pivotal. At the same time, United States or Europe. But China has a special place because it's proximity and it's a long history. And there's no history of antagonism or aggression of any sort, you see. So that's why I said right from the first day of after swearing in, and now coming to China, and I see the warmth, the friendship, just proved what I had believed to be true, because the majority of Malaysia are Muslims, so I take the trouble to meet up with the Muslim leaders from China, the Chinese Islamic Association, go to the mosque and pray with them, and they joining us for the iftar or the breakfast after fasting, to show that how accommodating Chinese authorities are, and they too is living in a multicultural country. It augurs well for both countries.
The friendship between China and Malaysia has a long history. The relations between the two countries have always been at the forefront in the region. This year marks the 10th anniversary of the Belt and Road Initiative. As one of the first countries to join the BRI, Malaysia has reaped great rewards in the process of jointly promoting the initiative. The Malaysia-China Kuantan Industrial Park, located in Kuantan, the capital of Pahang State in the East Bay of Malaysia, is a major BRI project and a demonstration base for cross-border international production capacity cooperation. Since the opening of the park in 2013, the Malaysia-China Kuantan Industrial Park and the China-Malaysia Qinzhou Industrial Park have flourished together, thus creating a model of economic cooperation and innovation between the two countries under the model known as Two Countries, Twin Parks. The 600-kilometer East Malaysia Railway is regarded as a road bridge connecting the east and west coast of Malaysia. It is also a BRI landmark project between China and Malaysia. There used to be no railway connecting the state of Kelantan on the east coast to the state of Selangor on the west coast. And when it opens to traffic, it will directly benefit the livelihood of the locals. In recent years, China-Malaysia bilateral trade has developed rapidly and vigorously. China has been Malaysia's largest trading partner for 14 consecutive years. Over the years, China and Malaysia have shared good times and bad times and progressed together. As the Malaysian old saying goes, water cannot be separated, a vivid description of the friendly ties between the two countries.
Well, talking about the Belt and Road Initiative, actually Malaysia was among the earliest countries to support this initiative. And thanks to the BRI, we've been able to see not only the flourish of some mega projects, including the East Coast Rail Link, the Two Countries Twin Parks project, but also the Malaysian durian gaining increasing popularity among Chinese consumers, being me, one of them. So, Mr. Prime Minister, at the Boao Forum for Asia, you stressed that the momentum of this initiative need to be regained. What do you mean by that? And how do you think the development synergies can be better enhanced between the two countries under this initiative?
We need to transcend beyond what has been achieved. I mentioned in my speech earlier last month about the Asian Monetary Fund, or Asian Common Currency of a sort, which the President has responded very positively. That is, of course, a next stage of collaboration. Otherwise, it is a joint effort in sharing research, agriculture, in the science, and in digital technology and economy, which both of us agree.
Mr. Prime Minister, when you spoke at the Boao Forum for Asia, you touched upon the competition on science and technology, and you said, quote, "The rivalry ahead can be either a productive or destructive turn." And how do you see the rising tide of politicization on the competition of science and technology among some countries?
You see, why I referred to that statement in the Boao conference is because we see the contribution of any country in science, technology, in digital economy, something productive. And we say, let us share. I don't see this as a threat, as a competition, or as a new attempt to control. But that seems to be the position of some countries. So unfortunately, as I see it, whatever is achieved here is beneficial to the region. The apps, whatever. If there are excesses of concerns, then we should take it up. Specifically, problems among the users or the apps, they can be problematic, but they cannot be used to stifle growth or to consider any innovation as a threat.
Let's talk about the China-ASEAN cooperation. Well, as a matter of fact, Malaysia was the very first ASEAN country that invited China to have dialogue with the bloc and also hold China-ASEAN summit. With both sides now accelerating the negotiation of the 3.0 version of free trade agreement, what role do you think Malaysia could play in this process?
We have been quite forthcoming in this. Because it is a very pragmatic consideration. We have long tradition relations with the United States and Europe and Australia and India. But China is an important neighbor. And I think they have proven in the last few decades, they have been very forthcoming, very helpful, and very engaging. Even some more controversial issues, even like the South China Sea. We don't see a very combative, arrogant, demanding China. We see them as, asking us to continue the dialogue. And that's why our position, and more so under my administration, we should, as I say, independently decide what is best for us. And what is best for us is to be good with our neighbors.
The ASEAN Outlook on Indo-Pacific was launched with a focus on ASEAN centrality. Is Malaysia concerned about some geopolitical fluctuations in the Asia-Pacific region? And how do you think China and Malaysia could work together to promote regional peace and stability?
Yeah, the formative period of ASEAN was to emphasize the need of independence, the need of neutrality, particularly during the Cold War period, to avoid the tension. And that general position continues. We don't want the region to be a base for military competition. That position has been quite consistent, although we remain friendly to all countries. That is why when the issue of AUKUS rose, our position is, to express concern. Although the explanation was given, I mean, the Australians took a lot of effort to try and convince us, and we appreciate that. But we do, on the basis of our consistent position, since the beginning, not to allow for situation to aggravate into a military tension and to be deemed or seen to be provocative. So that's why Malaysia took a tougher line on this, because it is not consistent. We worry it's not consistent with the issue of neutrality from the beginning, engaging with all, and not to allow ASEAN to be engrossed in this sort of unnecessary provocations. So in fact, we have said repeatedly, this interest of the international community for an amicable resolution to the tension between China and the United States, and not to see China unnecessarily as a threat. It's not a threat to Malaysia. I don't know how it is to other countries. You see? Of course, they take up issue of Taiwan. As far as our policy is concerned, our policy is one China policy.
Mm-hmm. It's a domestic issue.
Yeah, domestic issue.
Taiwan is part of China.
But as far as we're concerned, it's one China. We can express some views here and there, but then we cannot, as you say, question the integrity of these nations. That's been our policy, and we've been consistent at that.
How do you understand the rising trend of anti-globalization and anti-multilateralism?
We always call for regional cooperation. Here we have RCEP, for example, and we have APEC. So we are all in it, you see, because we are in a globalized world, and for small trading nations like Malaysia, we should benefit from engaging with all countries. We believe in engagement and multilateralism.
As you just mentioned, that now the world is going through many unprecedented challenges. This is a time we need critical solutions. We need various approaches and also, of course, more wisdom. So with that context, how do you see the significance of the Global Development Initiative, the Global Security Initiative, as well as the Global Civilization Initiative proposed by Chinese President Xi Jinping?
Well, that encapsulates the thinking, which is beyond just security or economics, because you are dealing with humanity. And therefore, the issue of dialogue, civilization dialogue, of respect is important. And that is why I think I consider that significant, because it augurs well for nations and the spirit to deal with problems in the future. You see, we, particularly those in politics, become so pragmatic and so materialistic, and that they consider only the present issues. But the president, and I believe in our Madani concept too, talks about values, culture, civilizations. Because Malaysia is a multiracial, multireligious country. The complexities in China is also known. So only through respecting others, understanding their civilization and cultures and contribution, can you forge this new understanding, new compassion that leaders lack. You see, we lack compassion. So we talk in terms of strict, rigid, ideological or racial tones. I think we should build on this, the initiative of the president, and I have told him, and he said, very consistent with the Madani concept.
Is the value or the kind of philosophy you just mentioned, does that kind of echo with your philosophy and value, which were written in Chinese, 我们都是一家人, we're all one family, and we heard that Chinese artwork of calligraphy used to hang on the wall of your office. So what kind of message do you get from that Chinese expressions?
You see, when I said that and I tried writing in Chinese, 我们都是一家人, I mean, actually, we are talking about humanity, and it's more relevant also in Malaysia and of course in the global stage, because if we consider ourselves apart, then we only consider the rest as the other, and therefore there will become this clash. But if you consider us in this big family, in the nation and family of nations, then I think there's less room for animosity and conflict and antagonisms.
You mentioned about Confucianism. Actually, we all know you have a really deep understanding about Confucianism. And back in 1994, when you visited China, you actually paid a visit to the temple of Confucius, right? Actually, by the way, I'm from Shandong, so that was my hometown. Not Chifu, but yeah, I'm from Shandong. Yeah. So how has the value or the core values of Confucianism has influenced and inspired you all those years?
Well, he's a great sage, and looking at his writings, Zulunyi, the Analects, you find that there's so much wisdom that we need to acquire. I benefit immensely to understand the other. And I think generally this is also what is talked about, the Global Civilization Initiative. And that, you know, you engage, you respect their differences, you understand, and finally the too many similarities.
Right.
Yeah. All civilizations condemn injustices, racism, religious bigotry, arrogance of power, corruption.
So it is about seeking commonality while respecting the differences of each other. Prime Minister Anwar, we heard that tourism was actually one of the issues that are high on your agenda this time in China. Well, Malaysia has always been one of the most popular holiday destinations among Chinese tourists. And now with international travel coming gradually back on track, you know, Malaysia could be once again a very hot spot for Chinese travelers. So as the Prime Minister now, how would you recommend your country to our Chinese viewers and also Chinese visitors?
Well, other than durian.
Yes, what are some of the untapped attractions maybe that you think are interesting to our viewers here?
Yeah, we need to promote Malaysia because it has, I mean, it's a beautiful country, you know.
It is beautiful, very diversified. I've been there.
Very diversified, you're right. And then the attraction is not only one area around Kuala Lumpur, for example. It is the East Coast, it is in Sabah, it is in Sarawak, it's the cave. So now, when China reopened, the number of Chinese tourists have increased threefold.
When you say that, I saw the smile on your face. That was really something positive and inspiring, right?
Yes, of course. Because I come from Penang, which is actually a tourist island. So it is important for the economy of the country. And then I used to present one constituency which is, you know, full of hotels in the seabed, near about 1.5 hours out of Kuala Lumpur.
Let's talk about the star ambassadors between the friendship of two countries, the giant pandas, because recently some videos released by Malaysian National Zoo about those pandas playing with their keepers has really went viral online. Those pandas, they were called Yi and Sheng Yi, with the literal translation of friendship and enhancing friendship. They were very well liked among Malaysian citizens, and also they were born in Malaysia and be returning to China soon. So, Mr. Prime Minister, do you personally love those giant pandas, and also what kind of impact do you think they have played in enhancing the time-honored friendship between the two countries?
But to be honest, my grandchildren know more about these pandas than me.
Do they love that?
Yes. They have been there, they've been to the zoo, they've been visited, but I must apologize, I have not seen them. But that has gone viral too in the country. And I think if when we decide to send back, it will be very emotional departure, I think people will be very sad. But,
heartbroken moment for our
it is
grandkids, huh?
true.
Economic development has been one of the priorities for your government. And Malaysia is now facing with some economic challenges domestically, which includes the rising inflation, falling currency, as well as the losses brought by the floods. So the devils are in the details, right, Mr. Prime Minister? So what are the specific plans that do you have for tackling those challenges?
You see, Malaysia used to do relatively better in the 90s.
Right.
I wouldn't say perfect because I know poverty was there, corruption was there, but relatively better in terms of growth. Under East Asia, it's called East Asian economic miracle those days. Although I don't think that is a fair picture to paint because there are some problems. You know, the problem with international agencies, when they get excited, they go and praise sky high that can lull people into complacency. But we have slided downwards for decades after the 97-98 crisis, and it was a problem of political instability for some years. Now we are back on track. So the issue, and I have focused on proper good governance and rid the country of that image of corruption. So we have to act very tough against this because that alone will encourage investors. So when I met the investors, one of the issues is they think that there's stability and there's an attempt by the government to ease the manner we conduct business affairs. And that by itself will help. Then they will ask us for the clarity in policies. So I talk about green or climate related policy or business, and then food security. Then we talk about digital economy. But on our part, then the infrastructure has to be improved. ECRL is of course a major development project under BRI, but the ports, the MRT and the LRT, all these are going to be back on track.
What are some of the key messages you think you've got from talking and meeting with Chinese leaders, with business delegates, as you mentioned, give you the confidence to foster this closer tie here with China?
I think I've seen responsible leadership with a clear vision, clarity in what they would like to achieve. And then to understand that in a global community, to work with friends in particular, to make sure that together we succeed and excel. But what is, again, I said earlier, unique about the leadership and my experience talking to them and reading about it, is that it is not just political or economic imperative. It is society and humanity.
Right.
That's why we talk about the civilization initiative, to understand, respect each other, and finally we are human beings.
Mr. Prime Minister, it was a great pleasure and honor talking to you, and many thanks for sharing all those very insightful views and experiences. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
During our interview with Prime Minister Anwar, we were deeply impressed about his strong will to develop the country, his appreciation for China-Malaysian friendship, as well as his reflection on major global issues. When addressing China-Malaysia friendship, he used a term, "We're all one family," both in Chinese and English. And that's our most sincere wish too, that both Malaysia and China could work together to build a better future. With that, we're going to wrap up this edition of Leaders Talk. I'm Zhou Yun reporting from Beijing. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.